Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. Today's episode, Stage 1 of the Tour de France, made possible by Bicycle, the largest global marketplace for pre-owned bikes. With over 20,000 high-quality pre-owned and refurbished bikes available, Bicycle connects the buyers and sellers to make the process of buying and selling bikes safe, easy, and convenient. Sellers, remember to use the code ButterflyEffect24 for 0% seller fee. Now let's get into today's Stage 1 of the 24 Tour de France, because it's going to be a magnificent one. 7 categorized climbs, and everyone is saying that this is the hardest Stage 1 that the Tour de France has had in history. I don't know about history, but it's been a long time. 7 categorized climbs, and the first one starts early into the stage, and it's about 12 kilometers long. So if you're trying to get into the break, you want to get into the breakaway in that first 25-30 kilometers of flat sections. Otherwise, your legs are going to blow up, and then you can't get in the break going up the first category climb here on Stage 1, which means you can't get up the road to try to win today's race. If you went to bed last night and you watched the Butterfly Effect and the Beyond the Coverage in the past, when I'm talking about the 4 favorites, Tadej, Primoz, Jonas, and Remco Evenepoel, well, we don't know exactly where any of their form is. Even Tadej Pogačar said he had COVID. So what will he do and UAE Team Emirates do on today's magnificent Stage 1? Well, when the racing starts, it doesn't take very long, about 15 kilometers. We'll see 7 riders go up the road. We see 2 more riders bridge across after X. If I back the film up just a little bit, they were aggressive, trying to get 2 guys across in the break, trying to do everything they can to get up to that 7-rider break, but it kept getting pulled back. Then we see Jonas Abrahamsen from X, and we see Gibbons from Lidl Trek. I don't know what Gibbons is doing, but he's going across with the X rider, and they'll bridge up on the first category climb to put 9 riders up in the first group. Now, guys, I cannot do this stage any justice, but before I can try to do it some justice, let's get into an ad from Bicycle. Remember to check them out in the description in the video if you're looking for a pre-owned high-quality used bike. Now, as we get into the first category climb, every one of the climbs, 7 climbs in today's Stage 1, and everyone was exciting, and everyone had something happening that was altering the general classification or some of the favorites. But as we're going up the first category climb, the breakaway is getting up to about 4.5, 5, 6 minute lead up there, and then EF Education starts pulling. This is going to start putting the hurt on some of the riders, but Cavendish is having a bad day. The Astana rider said in his interview earlier in the race, well, he had some pretty good confidence because he thought they would be okay on today's race, but he's basically one of the first riders going out the back. Luckily for Mark Cavendish, trying to win the 35th stage victory here in this year's 24 edition, luckily he's got 4 teammates all wrapped around him and looking after him. Now, after they go over the top of the category, the first category's climb here, over the top, we'll see that the Ion Izagirre from Cofidis in that breakaway of 9 riders, he wins the maximum KOM points on the very first KOM here of Stage 1. After that, I'm going to start to forget what's happening because there's 7 climbs. But once we start the second category's climb here on Stage 1, Jonas Vingegaard does exactly what I thought he needed to do. He starts getting on the radio and he starts reaffirming to his teammates that, hey, I feel pretty good right now at this moment. They still got about 100 miles to go in the race, but Jonas Vingegaard's already gone through about 50 kilometers of racing here on Stage 1, but he's getting on the radio and he's reaffirming to his teammates that, hey, I feel pretty good in the break. Director Sportif gets on the radio and says, hey, the dream is a possibility, more or less, and that means Jonas Vingegaard's in good shape. I brought that up because I said that's very important on Beyond the Coverage videos before the Tour de France started, that Jonas Vingegaard has to keep in contact, especially on Stage 1 with his teammates, and let him know how he feels, because when we get into the last half of this stage with 80 kilometers to go, there's 4 category climbs, and the last 3 are vicious, so his teammates have to know exactly how he's feeling at this moment in the race. That's why we see it. We get into the third category's climb. Wilco Kelderman had crashed somewhere in the stage, and they didn't show it, but he's bandaged up, and he's coming back with some water bottles for his teammates. Now, we get into the next category's climb here when we're talking about the fourth category's climb. Things start getting interesting right here. The breakaway has blown up, lost a couple riders. They're down to about 6 riders. Mate Mohoric is still in there. And we see Frank Vandenbroek in there from DSM. He's represented in there. FDJ, Valentin Madouas in there. So they got 6 strong riders that are still pulling up here with 3 dropped. Now behind we see UAE team members getting on the front because it's 4 climbs to go. When they start getting on the front, I start getting a little bit excited right there. And we see that it's Sivakov doing a lot of riding, but before him, it was Tim Wellens, and Tim Wellens is doing a solid job. Niels Palet had gotten dropped earlier in the stage. Tim Wellens will be pulling on the front until later he gets dropped. And then once we get on to the next category is climb, the 5th climb here on stage 1, it's time for Visma Bike to go to work. The gap's at just about 2 minutes and they start riding the front. I'm sitting on the Chesterfield. I was like, first off, I don't know why EF Education was riding the front. If you wanted to win the stage, put someone in that 9-rider break. It could have been easy to do. If you missed the 9-rider break, okay, you're riding the front a little bit. You're going to get it close. Maybe you jump Ben Healy across or someone else of your climbers, because they have Nielsen Palace. He's a climber too. So you jump one of those guys across on one of the mountain category climbs here, but they chose not to do that. Now we got Visma Bike on the front, and I'm sitting on Chesterfield. I'm like, what? I guess they're not going to play possum. If you're going to try to play possum at all with UAE team members, you got to do it on stage 1. You got to make these guys work as hard as you possibly can. But instead, when you look at the front of the group, it's Jan Tratnik up there that's pulling. He's pulling hard, and then we start looking behind Jan Tratnik. Well, we see that Bart Lemon, he did a solid job of riding earlier in the stages and stuff like that. But when we look at the race right now, they're not playing possum. They're riding the front the whole time. You look at the back of the group, though, when we start looking behind Visma Bike, we start looking behind Ineos, UAE team members, Bora Hansgrohe with Primoz Roglic in there. We start looking at Pseudo Quickstep, they're down on numbers, but you start looking all the way at the back there with Lidl Trek, Mads Pedersen swinging on the back. Well, back there, that's Juan Ayuso. So what I thought is once we got on with 4 categorized climbs to go, I figured UAE team members, once they saw Jan Ayuso was having some problems in the middle of this stage, they decided to abort plan 1, or maybe Tadej Pogačar did have COVID 10 days before the Tour de France. Either way, Visma Bike's riding full gas, and I'm thinking, I don't really like this tactic. And then we're going to see Bardet from DSM throw in a nasty attack, and he's going to go straight by the Visma Bike guys on the left side as we start seeing the trees overhead. Then he comes out solo. He's going full gas. Up front, we start looking at the original break of 6, what was left of him. Mate Mohoric was getting dropped. Gibbons was getting dropped, and Bardet's flying straight past Mate Mohoric. As his teammate up there, Frank Vandenbroek, he's sitting up. This kid's 23 years of age. He's in the front group of 3 of the breakaway specials here. He's sitting up, and this is exactly what you want to do because Romain Bardet's coming across about a 1:20 gap and gaining on the peloton the whole time. As Romain Bardet catches up with his young teammate up there, Frank, he's catching Gibbons at the same time from Lidl Trek, is getting blown out the back. We go back and look at the back of the peloton. Mads Pedersen's having some problems back there as he's trying to hold on for dear life. Go back up front as we reach the top of the KOM. It's Valentin Madoise going through, and he's got a gap, but we see it's Jonas Abrahamsen there from Uno X going across. As we see him in second place, once we look further back, well, we see that it's Frank and it's Romain Bardet back there from DSM the Duo going across. When I bring you back to film up a little bit, we got 2 DSM riders going up the road, and we're going to have 2 coming out the back because their sprinter, Fabio Jakobsen, and his teammate back there is waiting for him. They're going out the back too. But up front, the 2 riders have caught on to the front riders up front as we're starting the next climb. Now we got 2 more climbs. This is the penultimate climb. We got 4 riders going together. And if Abrahamsen can hold on to Valentin Madoise, they can figure out who has the KOM lead. But at this moment, the virtual lead is Jonas Abrahamsen. As he's holding on for dear life, he's the first to get popped out of this group of 4 right here. Now Valentin could have a chance of taking over the KOM jersey, but I think they'll be tight if I do the math right. 3 riders left at the front, 2 are DSM. Romain Bardet, he wants some help, but he's not getting any, so the 2 DSM riders are throwing in full gas. They got the gap at about 1:30, 1:45, and then Ben Healy on the penultimate climb is jumping across. EF Education, you missed the boat all over. You missed the boat in the first 30 kilometers of the flat stages, and now Bardet's already bridged across, and he's going full gas up there with his teammate. Ben Healy's trying to close the gap, but he can't quite bring it anything under about a minute, and I can't quite get it under 50 seconds. So Ben Healy's going full gas, and we start looking back there. Visma Bike's still pulling. Now as we see Visma Bike's pulling, they're down to Jan Tratnik back there, Wilco Kelderman, and Jorgensen. Remember, you can't ride Jonas Vingegaard because he's trying to win the Tour de France. they don't want to ride Wout van Aert because I assume they're going to want to try to win with him at the finish of stage 1. So they got 5 riders left and only 3 riders that can ride on the front. Jan Tratnik's doing everything he can to hold the gap up there, but it's not really coming down to the 2 leaders, and Ben Healy can't quite close the gap as we start the final and last climb here on stage 1 of the Tour de France 2024. Now the 2 riders in front. Take a look at Romain Bardet as he looks left over his young teammate there, Frank. He's looking left, and I believe what he's got to be saying to him, let's stay together. You cannot go over the top of this final climb here on stage 1 with about 25 kilometers to go in a long descent in the valley all the way into the finish of today's stage solo. So when I'm looking at Romain Bardet looking left over his teammate, as I see his teammate Frank look right over at him, they got to be saying, let's stay calm. Let's not blow each other up coming up this last climb, because they still got about a minute 40, minute 50 gap behind on everyone with the exception of Ben Healy, who's still trying to go solo and close the gap, but he's not having any luck because up front, the duo are doing some solid pulling. This last climb's just under 5%, so it's not super difficult, but at about a 7-kilometer length climb, you got to have some good legs right now, and Frank, the young kid, Frank van den Broek, he is flying right here, doing almost pull for pull with Romain Bardet. Now, as they get up to the top of the climb, the gap's just under a minute and 30. Ben Healy, he decides he's got to sit up because EF Education realized Ben Healy can't close the gap, so EF Education start riding on the front back there with Wilco Kelderman. And if I back the film up just a little bit, Jan Tratnik blew on this climb, which means Wilco Kelderman has to ride and Jorgensen has to ride because they only got 4 Visma Lease bike left. I don't know if this is a good plan. In fact, I'll tell you hands down, this is a knucklehead plan. There's no way I'm riding my 2 second lieutenants for Jonas Vingegaard right now, and I don't even know how good he is. He said earlier in the radio, as I explained to you, that he's feeling good here in stage 1, but we don't get into the mountains till later. Last thing I want to do on stage 1 is throw out every bit of muscle I have on Visma Lease bike and put my super lieutenants up there, Jorgensen and Wilco Kelderman riding the front, coming into the finish of today's stage. But they're riding the front, going up the last climb. EF Education's going full gas. They'll bring back their rider that couldn't bridge the gap, Ben Healy. As they get Ben Healy on the front, they're riding. They got about 5 guys left in the front group. Visma Lease bike got 4. Lidl Trek swinging at the back going over this climb, but everyone's wrapped around Mads Pedersen trying to get him over the top. If I back and film all the way up, all the sprinters have gotten dropped. Now we don't have pure sprinters up here, but we do have some sprinters. Mads Pedersen, I said his name, and Wout van Aert. You know he's angry after losing the classics from the crash at Dorsdorf Vlaanderen, so they're going over the top of this climb. The gap, though, at about a minute 45 up to the 2 leaders up there. They're dropping down the descent at just about 22 kilometers to go. We see Romain Bardet, he's going back to his car because his feeding zone's going to start to close. As the car's flying up there, they're going through the curves, they're going through the roundabouts. Bardet gets his bottle, and as he comes out of the next roundabout, he's sprinting. He's got his teammate on his wheel. They're going full gas, but the gap is starting to drop back there. As we start looking at the field chasing, EF Education's on the front. Now Lidl Trek has decided to get on the front and do some work after Mads Pedersen has recovered from passing 3 climbs here on stage 1 with the front group. We're down to about 50 riders. There's not a ton of sprinters back there. There's only 2 that I can see. So those 2 guys, they got their teams on the front, and they got EF Education pulling. Why? I don't know, because they don't have a pure sprinter. They have no one up here that can beat Mads Pedersen or certainly beat Wout van Aert coming in the finish here at stage 1, but they're pulling full gas. We got about 6 riders pulling back there, 2 from EF, 2 from Lidl Trek, 2 from Visma Lease bikes. That's Wilco Kelderman and Jorgensen, who won Dauphiné, pulling to try to win stage 1 for Wout van Aert. As the gap gets under 30 seconds, we're coming into about 5 kilometers to go. Once it gets into 3 kilometers to go, the Peloton's got the 2 riders up front from DSM in sight. But Frank van den Broek is pulling like a monster. Romain Bardet is pulling full gas. Then we come into 2 kilometers to go. The Peloton's got them in their sight. They're getting down to about 11 seconds. As we come into 1.4 kilometers to go, the legs are starting to fall off. Romain Bardet and his teammate Frank has to do some damage control as the gap's at still 11 seconds. From DSM, I'm running out of air here as the DSM kid hits the front with 1.4 kilometers to go. He's pulling with everything he can because Romain Bardet's got no legs left. They go under the Flamme Rouge with 1K to go, 2 left turns. They come through the 2 lefts. It's about 800, 700 meters to go. The Peloton's just coming out, but the 2 riders in front, they're about 500 meters to go. Once we get into 400 meters to go, we see both riders up front are looking back over their shoulder all the time. We come into 250 meters to go. Frank van den Broek is still on the front since 1.4 kilometers to go. Then Romain Bardet brings up the last bit of energy he's got in his legs, comes by the left side there of Frank. When he looks over at him, they know they're going to win today's stage 1. He sits up with about 50 meters to go, points over at his teammates. DSM wins stage 1. Romain Bardet, the Frenchman, gets the stage win, the race leader's yellow jersey. His teammate Frank, he'll get the youth jersey, and he'll get the point jersey. Behind him, well, Lidl Trek came out of the last corner doing everything they can for Mads Pedersen. Then Wout van Aert blew the doors apart on everyone coming up the right side, with Tadej Pogačar getting 4th and Wout van Aert getting 3rd on the stage to round out the podium. Now, they finished with about 50 guys, about 5 seconds behind the duo of DSM riders. And when you look at the DSM riders, well, they took just about everything except for the KOM jersey, because Jonas Abrahamsen from Uno X will get the KOM jersey. But Romain Bardet, the Frenchman who's had fine rides here at the Tour de France, but never has worn the race leader's yellow jersey, he gets it at the end of today's race. Now, when I break down today's race tactically, what did I see? I saw a very strong UAE team member. It's minus Ayuso. He was hurting a bit there with 2 climbs still to go on today's stage 1. That's probably why UAE team members had to back off the throttle. And if that was it, that hitting the abort button was incredibly wise, because you do not want to start dropping riders for no reason. You don't want to ride like Viz Melissa bike that went to the front, dropped all their teammates on stage 1 to try to win the stage. I was texting with my home skillets on today's stage 1, and I was saying, going over the last climb when they had Wilco Kelderman pulling and Jorgensen pulling, I said, who's going to pull the 2 minutes back, 1 minute and 45 seconds back on the 2 leaders when you go over the top? That means if you're Viz Melissa bike, you have to put your faith, and I know it normally happens where another team gets on the front. But you see Lidl Trek, they were at the back there with Mads Pedersen, so he needs to recover. So when will they get there? They had to rely on EF Education's Ben Healy not being able to bridge the gap up to the 2 leaders up there to bring him back, and then you had EF Education pulling too. But when we really break it down, EF Education had multiple numbers. They only rode 2 guys. Lidl Trek had at least 5 riders, but they only rode 2, and they missed pulling back the 2 leaders up front. Viz Melissa bike, well, they had 4 riders in there, but you can't ride Jonas. You could have possibly put Wout on the front to do 1 hard pull, further 10, 15, 20K out to do 1 damage control pull. But they didn't want to do that either, because they want to keep them fresh at the finish, which is probably the right way to do it. But the wrong thing to do on today's stage 1, if you're Viz Melissa bike, was not to play possum if the field's all together. Let that break go up the road. Make UAE team members ride like crazy, because they only rode 1 climb, really. They did a great job. They had all of their GC guys at the end of today's race. They're intact with Adam Yates, Sivakov, of course Pogačar was up there, and even Ayuso didn't lose time on today's stage. But when we start looking over Bora Hansgrohe, well, they're a little bit thin, but Primoz Roglic still had his 2 lieutenants, because Jai Hindley finished up there and Vlasov finished up there. The team that looked to me to be the weakest was Pseudo Quickstep, which wasn't a surprise. They didn't come in with full climbers. And when I take you back to the neutral section, that's where Jan Hertz, their climber that went top 10 at the Giro d'Italia, he got knocked off his bike after signing on today's stage 1 by a spectator, I guess, and came off and broke his teeth, is what we were told anyways. So Jan Hertz coming up short on today's stage 1 with no teeth. Well, I can feel that. I'm missing a tooth right now too. So I can feel for you. It's painful, and that's probably why he's riding bad. But Pseudo Quickstep, Remco Evenepoel still had Ilan van Wilder up there. He still had Mikel Landa, but they were hidden the whole race. They spent no energy, and when I show you a picture right here on the screen of Remco Evenepoel, he looked fresh as a daisy throughout today's race and was even up there at the front of the peloton for the sprint. So Pseudo Quickstep are down on power, but their guy, Remco Evenepoel, and his super lieutenants look good. Viz Melissa bike, they had some power, but they used it all up today. UAE team members looked fantastic, and Bora Hansgrohe, well, Primoz Roglic is much like we look over at Remco Evenepoel, he's down to 2 lieutenants with Vlasov and Jai Hindley. So it was a super interesting stage. I did not do it justice, so you have to watch the whole 200K, because there were 7 climbs on today's race. Every climb had something happening, and at the end of the day, yes, Mark Cavendish from Astana made the time cut. He did lose 1 teammate in Michele that had to abandon today's race, but Mark Cavendish made the time cut. He's going to have to do it again on tomorrow's Lumpy and Bumpy Stage 2 if he wants a shot at winning 35 stages here at the Tour de France in 2024. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. I'll try to do you some justice on Stage 2. Stage 1 was exciting like I predicted, but it unfolded unlike I had predicted, because Tadej Pogačar backed his team up. Ayuso's going bad. Strategy-wise, they were perfect. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next edition real soon.